Welcome back to Slop Laugh. Today's Slopic, the Crew 2's new offline mode, actually kinda sucks, maybe? So after the entire debacle with the first Crew game and all of the backlash that caused by Ubisoft basically just pulling the plug and making the game completely inaccessible for pretty much 2 years until an offline mode was actually developed and came out, Ubisoft actually did the sensible thing and had Ivory Tower, the developers of these games, commit to an offline mode for the other Crew games. And just a couple days ago, we actually got the offline mode for the Crew 2. But it's not quite as good as you would hope. It does come with a bunch of caveats, because it isn't really your classic offline mode where your online save and your offline save are basically just interlinked and the save just kind of gets transferred over like pretty much all the time. They made a point to call this a hybrid mode. And the reason why it is called a hybrid mode is because you have two save files separately that are completely like mutually exclusive from one another. So on one hand, you have your online save file, which if you've played the game before, you might already have. And you can either start a new, fresh save as your offline save, or make a copy of that online save. But these two can, past that point, not really interact with one another. I think you can maybe at most overwrite your offline save with a newer online save. Whatever you do in the offline mode basically cannot transfer over to the online save at all. I assume this is probably done to prevent cheating or hacking in currency and whatnot. So I sort of kind of understand this approach. I think it's a little bit ridiculous to still try this hard to prevent people from cheating on a game that is now like 7 or 8 years old. But I get it, you know, it's important to the developers, and at the end of the day, obviously, would rather play a game with no cheaters than a game that does have a bunch of, like, cheated leaderboards and stuff. However, that is not really my main concern, although it does definitely kind of suck and makes playing offline kind of pointless at the moment, because anything you do there doesn't really transfer over to the online mode, which is the mode where you can still earn, like, online rewards from the summit and stuff. But it is, at the very least, a way to preserve the game, and that is why, despite all of the critique that I'm gonna voice in this video, I am so glad and thankful it exists. I would rather have a half-baked offline mode than none at all, and it's still a huge win for just preserving the game, because at the end of the day, even though I may not be a huge fan of the Crew 2, it doesn't matter. Every game deserves to be preserved, and with this now hybrid mode, we have achieved at least some level of preservation. But what does make this offline mode so bad? Why am I making an entire video critiquing it? Well, it turns out there are just several features that don't work in the offline mode that should work just fine, but just don't. And I think in order to just show all of that off, I'm just gonna like get right into the game. And this is where we can already see the first issue. You will still need the Ubisoft launcher in order to still access the game. Now, the good thing is, you don't actually need to be online for this launcher. You can actually just play offline and then log in from here. And when you try to start the game, this is the next pop-up that you will get. So, unfortunately, just because the game is offline anymore doesn't mean that everything is now freely accessible, basically. Because the anti-cheat that the game uses, in this case BattleEye, is still required and still is working in the background. And what's important to know is that this is kernel level anti-cheat. And what this basically means is that this game still has full control over your entire PC and can read pretty much anything, which is still a massive security concern. But it also prevents two major things that people might now want to do with the game being available offline. And number one is obviously mods. I think one of the main factors to why I've been enjoying the Crew 1's offline mode so much recently is because people started to make all kinds of mods for it. I've even showed some of these. I think even my last video was about like a mod basically, where it let me kind of like explore all of the outer areas of the game. But unfortunately, as it is right now, this game still uses this kernel level anti-cheat, this BattleEye launcher, which means you cannot actually modify the game in any capacity, even if you never intend to go online anymore at all. And the other thing this means, and this is probably arguably even worse, is that this still completely like kills any Linux and by extension Steam Deck compatibility. So if you have a Linux PC or if you run a Steam Deck, and we're kind of hoping that with this offline mode, you can now take this game with you and just kind of play on the go. Unfortunately, you're shit out of luck. You're still not able to do this, and it's mainly because of this kernel level anti-cheat. So as you can see here, the moment you start up the game now, it will immediately tell you that there's no local save connected. And before we start, my PC is currently disconnected from the internet. So you can see that this logo here is indicating that we are offline. And I have my Ethernet cable right here. I just plugged out my Ethernet cable right from the back of my PC. So we are fully offline now. There's no online connection, and it doesn't really matter if you're online or offline. It will immediately tell you like, hey, we don't have a local save. And so what you can do here is either, if you have an online connection, just transfer your online save onto basically offline save. You can just make a copy of it, basically a local copy. But what I don't want to do for now is actually continue offline, because I think that's going to be the experience for a lot of people who may not have played the game before, or may not have like stable enough internet, or maybe have data plans. So some people might actually play this game entirely offline. I'm gonna validate here and see what happens. But it tells you once again here, your offline progression will be saved on a local copy. Like once again, these are two separate save files from here on. And you can constantly update your offline save with your online save whenever you do make some progress online. And here's like already kind of like the big kicker. And they're kind of vague about this, because it says store purchases can only be connected through an online save. Now, what do they mean with store purchases? We're gonna see this again later, but let's continue for now. I might ask, why would you even want to start the game from scratch? And honestly, it's like really a matter of preference. I understand if you've played the game a lot before and maybe even invested some money into currency or cars and invested a lot of time into playing the summits every week. You might not want to do this at all, but I'm actually someone who really enjoys replaying games. Arguably, I enjoy it way more to replay a game than to continuously play the same game all the time. Okay, let me just real quick. Yeah, that's looking a lot better. Thank you. Okay, now that the game looks somewhat presentable again, let me continue. So I'm actually someone who loves to play or replay various racing games. Even something more life servicey like The Crew, I actually quite enjoy. In fact, I replayed a bunch of the Forza Horizon games. In particular, I replayed Forza Horizon 4 on Steam, because I had a separate Steam copy which has a separate save file anyways. And I even went through all of the achievements in that game, and it got me like a new appreciation for Horizon 4, in particular its DLC. So at times replaying a game can make you appreciate a game even more, and can be more fun than playing something continuously. And so The Crew 2 is also one of those games that I would maybe at some point replay from the beginning and just try new different cars out, maybe just like, interact with systems that I maybe just didn't really interact with before, in the hopes of maybe like finding some kind of new appreciation for it. As we're gonna soon find out, that is gonna come with a whole bunch of caveats that make it kind of hard to justify to do it at all. And so after playing through the entire introduction, taking a look at the car dealership, this is where the problems already begin. So while you do have access to all of the free cars that got added over time, there are a bunch of things here that you will still not be able to access in the offline mode, even stuff you paid for. So for example, summit rewards are not accessible and will not be accessible at all in the offline mode, which also means that if you are not transferring these cars over, if you manage to get any of them, you will never see them again. And I don't think that once they shut off the service at some point, they will just make these accessible and will update the offline mode in any way. Maybe there is a chance, but at the moment, summit rewards are not available. Although I will say this is like the one thing where I can see maybe it makes a little bit of sense at least. Although I still find it weird because, now that the offline mode is completely separate and you can never transfer any content from the offline mode into the online mode, maybe they just don't want people to access these cards at all because they think it makes them less valuable for the online mode. But since the online mode still requires, like, playing the summit, whatever. But what I truly do not understand is why Season Pass and Gold Edition content is not accessible in the offline mode. So as you can see here, I own both the Gold Edition and by extension, I think also the Season Pass, which means that I should have access to all of these cars. And in fact, I do in the online mode. And so if you're wondering what all of this includes, so the Gold Edition includes 5 cars, 2 cars here and then another 3 extra cars here, as well as the Season Pass, which includes 25 cars, as well as a 20% discount on the in-game shop. So that's 30 cars in total that you will not have access to anymore, even though you paid for this. And what sucks so much about this is that these are genuinely really cool cars, like a Ferrari FXXK or a Mitsubishi Lancer Evo X. And the devs confirmed this as well on their official The Crew 2 page, where it reads for accessing content and rewards: if you've purchased vehicle packs, the season pass, or any unlocked rewards via Ubisoft Connect, make sure to claim them in the house or any HQ while playing online. And only once you claim them, you can then export the online save to your offline version, to your offline save basically. And only then it's available. And the same is also true for certain vanity items in the game that you can only buy with crew credits, which is kind of like the premium currency of the game. So obviously there aren't really many ways you can make crew credits in the offline version, but if you do have an online save with crew credits on it, and you have enough crew credits that you could buy something with it in the offline mode, it doesn't work. Because some items, they're kind of vague with how much this actually is, but there are items in the storefront that are not available in the offline mode, even if you have the crew credits for it. But the even worse thing, in my opinion, and this is the one that really sucks, is that certain user-generated content features are completely unavailable. And I think the biggest miss here is the livery editor. So the livery editor does not work in the offline mode. And even more so, any custom liveries that you had on your cars previously will not transfer over to the offline save. So the moment you transfer over your cars over to the offline mode, they will all lose their liveries. For example, here's my starter car, and if I try to apply a livery, I can apply all of the presets. These are pretty much all of the liveries from the Crew 1 just ported over. But there's no way for me to actually make a custom livery for this. This is all I can do here. Which makes no sense, because why the hell would you need an online connection for the livery editor for your own personal cars that you just have in offline mode? There's nothing, once again, there's nothing you can transfer over to the online mode, so this does not make any sense to me whatsoever. So with all that out of the way, I am still glad this exists. Once again, as I said in the beginning of the video, I would rather have a bad offline mode or an incomplete offline mode than none at all. But I still think this is not enough. I don't think this is sufficient. Now, you could theoretically make it through the game just fine without any of these features and without any of the content. But once again, I think the Gold Edition stuff and the Season Pass content that people paid for should still be accessible. People paid for this. So I don't know why it shouldn't be preserved when the rest of the game is preserved. And the same also goes for the livery editor, which I think is not like a major feature of the game, but it is something that people would want to still use in the offline mode to just make liveries for their own cars. And it just makes no sense as to why they decided to remove it. It makes no sense whatsoever. And so while it is cool that we now have an offline mode, and while I would probably like to actually start a new save file from scratch, there isn't really any good reason to do so. Like, the sensible thing, the reasonable thing here is to now start a game, if you haven't already, start a game in the online mode, claim all of the rewards there, and then transfer it over to offline, and then stay offline if you want to. Like, regardless, in some way, the game still requires an online connection if you want to access all of the content, at least once. So this hybrid mode, to me, is more of a half measure, if I'm being completely honest here. And I really think we should hold both Ivory Tower and Ubisoft to a higher standard than this. Now, there is certainly a chance that this video will age like milk, and they will continue to update and expand the hybrid mode and make stuff like the livery editor actually usable. We cannot say for sure yet, but something's telling me that this is just kind of like a done deal. So they can just say, oh yeah, well, we have an offline mode now. You can play the game without an online connection, when there's really only half the story. And once again, it feels just kind of like a half measure, just so they can wash their hands with it and just say, yeah, oh yeah, well, but we did it. Technically, we did it. But I don't know. Let me know what you think. I think this is just kind of, it leaves like a bitter taste in my mouth, honestly, considering that they did this. And it doesn't really make me excited to play the game again from scratch, knowing that there's like a bunch of stuff that I will just not have access to. And also doesn't make me excited for when this game eventually gets shut down and all I'm left with is my offline save that I transferred over from online, but will just have a bunch of like liveries strapped from my cars. And even though I have a bunch of crew credits, I will never be able to spend all of them. So yeah, this is the newest about the Crew. We just made 2 videos in a row about the Crew. Maybe I will take a break from talking about the Crew now, because quite frankly, I don't even play this game all that much. Because I think the first game was better. But yeah, let me know what you think about this entire situation in the comments below. And with that, I'll hopefully see you next time. Take care, take it easy, and as always, peace. See you guys. Oh wait, I should have said thanks for stopping by.